speaking of All-Americans, ours is here. John Whittle with the Big Spur. Hey, brother.
Good morning. Happy to see you guys.
Oh, well, we're always
here.
Mondays are great when you're around. You've killed off the birds, but now we've got Mike's dog, so at least we'll have some background noise. So everything's all okay. Question for you. So Jalon Kilgore, of course, on preseason All SEC teams, as we know, he's in line for a huge year at South Carolina. But the attention, of course, is centering around Dylan Stewart and LaNorris Sellers. 2012, is that the last time that we had this much attention around a duo of players coming into a season? Clowney, Lattimore?
Yeah, absolutely. To this level, I mean, those were both national guys, and there have been good players since then, but there haven't been many to that level. Period. Let alone two at the same time. So, I'm with you. I'm with you. That was a special season that year, and South Carolina's hoping to replicate that this year. And of course, having the guy at quarterback certainly helps out a little bit too.
Brings up kind of I started looking into this a little while ago, but I was a little too late. Had too much going on around here. When South Carolina has high expectations in football, high expectations, not like generated fan hype. Talking when the rest of the country's paying attention, they go, well, I like the Gamecocks. They got a chance to be pretty good. I would say all but 1 year, which was 2014, and that fell apart real quick in Williams-Brice Stadium when A&M walked in. I'd say more times than not, they actually are pretty close to living up to them, right? I mean, you think back, it's few and far between. Right, Mike? It's not like every year this happens and then they roll out a 5-7 or 7-5. But I mean, generally when the media is looking at this group going, yeah, they're pretty good, they actually end up being pretty good. What does that mean this year? I don't know.
2001 team lived up to the hype and then some.
Right. 11, 12, 13.
And there was a preseason, almost positive preseason top 25 coming off the season that they had in 2000, which should have had an extra win with the Rod Gardner push-off, but and the Outback Bowl win, that 2001 team lived up to it.
Mm-hmm.
That's and then of course you referenced the biggest one, and John agreed with, those 5 years. At that point, Carolina had arrived to some extent. I mean, there's different levels of that. Of course, there's a difference between Alabama arriving and winning multiple national championships and what Carolina did for those 5 years. But still, it was the high watermark of the program. That's what everybody wants to see more of.
Mm-hmm. You agree with that, Mike?
Yeah, I think during that time, didn't South Carolina get their overall record above 500?
Yeah, exactly.
It was below 500 lifetime before that stretch. So, yeah, now comfortable. I don't want to jinx anything, but comfortably above at this point.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, and you got to make sure that you kind of separate what real hype is. There's localized stuff where it's like this team could be better than people think, but we're talking about a little bit of a different scale right now. We hopefully the results end up meeting the expectations by so many. Again, not us. I'm talking about other people out there who are looking the 10,000-foot view, Mike, that you talk about all the time. If those expectations meet it. What's interesting is about this 5th ranking in the preseason is I know we're in the middle of a 12-team playoff right now. So if the media thinks you're 5, and again, do these things always equate? Well, of course they don't. I think only 10 times in 33 years is the projected winner actually won the league, if my math is correct there. But if they're saying that you're 4th or 5th or 6th, you're in the mix for a playoff spot. If this thing goes to 16, John, which we all anticipate that it's going to, and the SEC gets their way, which is the 5-11 model, and your preseason top 5 or top 6, they're looking at you as an actual playoff team. Like this is a playoff team out of the league. The Big Ten gets their way, and order of finish plays out, then you're just sitting there knocking on the door like they were last year.
Yeah, I'm.
It's funny how it's all
see
changed.
which way this is going to go. Yeah, with the playoff deal. Like, I haven't followed it that closely. I figure it'll go back and forth, which I think it has, and wake me up when they make the decision. But yeah, I'm with you. You finish top 5, you're going to have a really good shot to be in there. And I was a little bit surprised that the media picked South Carolina 5th. And I think I heard Mike say, y'all correct me if I'm wrong, that there wasn't a whole lot of bulletin board material, maybe something along those lines for the Gamecocks this year. You're not sneaking up on anybody, got some respect, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you got picked to finish 5th. You got 3 all SEC teams, and you only got 3 guys on there.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Fair.
what stuck out to me.
Yeah.
Either you're overrating the team or you're underrating some players, and maybe that's kind of what can be sold to this team to put on the bulletin board a little bit.
That's so interesting you said that. Mike, do you remember when we had Beamer on in January and Shane said, yeah, we know it's coming. You return a big time quarterback, you won 9 or 10 games. Yeah, they're good. They're in the top 15. That's kind of, John, that's basically what you just described right there. I guess my question to you would be, is there a player that was omitted from those 3 lists on either side of the ball that you felt like should have been on there?
Well, I was thinking about that last week, and I couldn't come up with a glaring omission. Now, if South Carolina is going to be as good as we think, there's certainly going to have to be some more. And I think that South Carolina is good enough on the offensive line to have a guy or maybe 2 in that mix of the top 15 players in the league. So I would say that if South Carolina is as good as we think, you're going to see at least somebody from the offensive line, and somebody else is going to have to step up on the defensive side. Somebody mentioned on the message board Judge Collier, and if he makes the same kind of jump from year 2 to year 3 as he made from year 1 to year 2, then I can certainly see that one being the case. But you look at some of these guys who have been around here for a while. Does DQ Smith take the next step and go from being a good SEC player who was a freshman All SEC to being an All SEC caliber performer at safety? I don't know. He's somebody you certainly circle and think that maybe that can happen for him. But yeah, I mean, those are a couple of guys offhand, and then what's going to happen at the running back situation. I think Rahsul Faison is certainly capable of being that good if he gets cleared. But we'll see what happens with that one.
I don't know what you're about to say, Mike, but I want to tee you up real quick because John, you kind of played into the hands here real quick. Mike mentioned this last week. He's dead on about it. I think that if you're talking about more players, because Josiah Thompson would be the one I would circle. I think you're going to have a really good left tackle if you want to have a All SEC, All American type year at the quarterback position. So he's the guy that I would circle there. I'm with you on DQ Smith, but I don't know how this kid ends up having. LaNorris Sellers was picked as the first team quarterback, not the second, not the third, not honorable mention. Numero uno, right? And we're going to get more into that here in a minute as it pertains to his peers. But if he is the best quarterback in this league at the end of the year, how on planet Earth is he going to do it without having some sort of first, second, or third team All SEC wide receiver? Like that would be. We talked about this last week, and Mike was kind of giving some numbers and some insight on it. That's where it falls in line here for me. I don't know if has there ever been a first team All SEC quarterback and he didn't have a wide receiver make any of the teams around him? I don't know. I guess we'd have to go back and look. Yeah,
Cam Newton in 2010.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So
there's one.
They had pedestrian guys. But again, Cam was next level specials. Like I put Cam in a really college Cam, a very unique category. But your point is still very valid. Like almost all those other guys, like you look at a Jackson Dart last year, and I was very high on Jackson Dart. I think he's a very talented player, his first round pick for a reason. But he had dudes at wide receiver. Their problem was, and this is something to look for Carolina this year. I think sometimes we mistake the fact that since running backs have been devalued, like you can just throw anybody back there and it's not a big deal. No, it is a big deal. And my concern Rocket Sanders on a short yardage play, I felt really good if it came down to him and one defender, he was going to get that extra yard and move the chains. Ole Miss couldn't do that last year. They lost Judkins to Ohio State. They ran a gimmicky, the Pegues guy was a defensive lineman. Whenever you put a big fat guy in the backfield, everybody thinks it's real cute when you get the first down. The problem is very often they didn't. And they lost Kentucky and LSU, 2 games that they were leading because they couldn't convert on 3rd down and short and 4th down and short because they didn't have that running back that made the difference. Rocket Sanders was that guy. And we'll talk more about Faison because I have another update on him. But does Carolina have that guy this year? Because you can't have LaNorris Sellers run every play, when it's 3rd and short, 4th and short.
No.
Eventually, you got to have a running back. It's got to make some plays.
Yeah.
So who's going to be that guy? Asked John Whittle. I ask you.
Great question. Great question. I don't have the answer yet. Like, to me, I think Faison is the guy. And then when you get past him, I like the other 3 guys is well enough with Jaworn and Matthew and Oscar. I think Oscar's probably the guy at least to begin with, and see where things go from there. But I think Faison's on a different level from those 3. So I don't have the answer for you at this point. I guess we'll kind of go through that when camp arrives and see who's used their summer most productively, because they're all pretty different guys. All 3 have their own kind of sets of talent, but who elevates their game past that. So I think your money would be on Attaway because he's like 30 years old at this point. He's getting the NFL retirement age for a running back.
Is he the most physical? I mean, who's the most physical? Who's the ground and pound guy?
Ooh.
Yeah,
I would go with Fuller of that.
Fuller is the guy who jumps out to me too, but you still have to grow up a little bit in there as well. So I don't know. We'll see. It's not Howell. I would think it would be Fuller.
Let me add a couple of things to that. Number one, they signed Faison for a reason. Okay. I mean, he was kind of the guy that they wanted, right? So obviously, and we know he's a good football player. Things seem to be trending in Carolina's way, but again, Mike will give us a little bit of an update on that here in a second. I would not discount Isaiah Augustave, the kid that came in from Colorado, for a couple of reasons. One, he was a really good player coming out of high school. We got to remember that. Okay. Number 2, he played behind the worst offensive line in college football last year for a team that threw it like 75% of the time. I don't know that he's actually had a fair shake yet at being who he is capable of being. And actually, if you go back, like if nobody knew that and they just looked at the numbers, John, and they were like, 85 carries for less than 400 yards. He's a depth option or a depth piece at South Carolina. Okay, well, now go back and look at the system that he was in and then tell me how good of a football player he is. I think he's being slept on a little bit. I think in about 3 weeks, people are going to know a lot more about him.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you on that. And, I mean, part of it is, I haven't gotten eyes on him yet around here. So that's part of it too. But yeah, I'm with you. He could easily end up being the top guy if Faison's not cleared.
He's a big kid too. Mike, you said you had an update on.
I don't want to get people all excited. Like we're not that much closer to the truth, but this is from his attorney. And I mentioned last week, he said cautious optimism, but you never know when it comes to the NCAA. As John has pointed out, and JC and others, this is somewhat of a unique case. Like not all these NCAA cases, which by the way, the NCAA actually is having a winning percentage, if you want to call it that, in eligibility cases. They're all of a sudden their numbers are real high. If this went purely by the letter of the law, the kid's not going to play. But what attorney Darren Heitner expressed to me is that they have done this with other players. They have to have a waiver, period. The rules are not on Carolina's side. It has to be a waiver. He had success with a waiver with a Louisville basketball player. They followed up Friday with the NCAA. And then this morning I asked Darren again about it, and he said, Mike, it's unreal the way that this is dragging out. So when the attorney is frustrated at this point, I'm not sitting here making a prediction one way or the other because I have no idea, but it's certainly dragging on and on. Now, if you lose, you can still appeal.
Sure.
But if they drag this out till late August, I mean, at that point, you've basically lost a season. I don't know if it's really feasible at that point to have him ready.
Yeah, John, can he practice? Because he practiced in the spring.
Well, my question on that would be, it's taken so long. I wonder if he's been denied once already and they're in an appeal process. Maybe that's something that's one of the reasons why it's taken so long to get an answer, because, obviously if you're in the appeal process, you're not going to want to leak out that he's already been declined.
Right.
So, that's something I've wondered about, and, that maybe wouldn't surprise me. I think that for Shane to have mentioned last Monday at SEC Media Days that, hopefully we get an answer this week, or maybe we get an answer this week, which is obviously now last week and no answer came. They felt like an answer was coming. Nobody is ever particularly committal to a time frame with the NCAA because, it's the NCAA and they don't give you a time frame. They operate how they feel like operating. But I feel like Shane had gotten some type of indication to believe that a decision was coming sooner rather than later, for him to have said, it might be maybe later this week. I think Shane had probably gotten some type of indication. So I don't know. I have a tendency to think that something's coming sooner rather than later in terms of a decision. But I'm I'm like everybody else and getting a little frustrated with how long it's taking. You kind of want a resolution and move forward one way or the other.
Greg brings up a good point too, is that he's already said he's not going to appeal. He's going to just go pro at that point. Like if this thing drags on, if we get into August, I don't know when, I don't know what the line of demarcation is, mid-August, late August, that at that point it's, let me just go pro, and this is ridiculous. They thought it was going to be settled last week, is what I was told. They felt confident that they would actually have a decision from last week. Again, this is all to get a waiver. But obviously that didn't happen, and now we just seems like every week we're saying this. This is the week. The next week's the week. It's July 21st.
Yeah.
What other information are you waiting on? Blood samples, DNA, like what? It's pretty. I realize it's a unique case, but the information is not unique. There's nobody's trying to hide anything here. You can see how many years he's been around. So obviously it's a unique case from a clock standpoint. You can also see multiple years he didn't play a snap. Right. So are you going to take that into consideration, or are you not? Am I missing something? I don't know.
Well,
is there something else?
It's not like this just popped up this summer. The kid's been on campus for 7 months.
Right.
So, I mean, we could do this all day, but we don't need to. I want to ask you all a question about. So, Brad Crawford listed his quarterbacks in the league. Okay, 16 projected starters, right? I guess. John, I was reading an award-winning piece this morning. It's called On All Things on thebigspur.com for anybody that's never woke up on a Monday morning, got their coffee. It's a very light read, very versatile read, not just all on South Carolina, on other things. And you brought up an excellent point. Mike, listen to this. John said in his, again, award-winning On All Things column this morning, basically, if Marcel Reed ends up being the 13th best quarterback in the league, where Brad Crawford and CBS have him right now, could be a long year for defenses in this league, and this is generally a fairly defensive league. Expand on that a little bit, Mr. Whittle.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I like Marcel Reed more than other folks. I've seen him play a few games now, know his background a little bit. I see growth coming, a lot of growth coming for him this season, and maybe I'm just wrong. Been that way before, but I mean, I don't see him 13th. And if he is, either I'm really wrong or it's a hell of a good league from a quarterback standpoint this year. And, you know, I think it is anyway. I mean, I think you're looking at, I mean, he had Talon Green at Arkansas 7th. And, you know, I mean, I'm thinking about that. And, you know, I guess I can get behind that, but you know, you're also looking at an Arkansas team that's picked to finish near the bottom of the league, and teams with really good quarterbacks don't usually finish at the bottom of the league. So I don't know. I'm really curious to see how that position plays out. If Marcel Reed is 13th best, then you know somebody's wrong somewhere. It's probably me, but. You know, I've got Texas A&M up there. I think I had them 5th in my SEC poll, either 5th or 6th. And, you know, they're probably not going to be there if Marcel Reed is the 13th best quarterback.
I didn't see the list, Jamie. Let me guess the top 5.
Okay.
The same 5 on almost everybody's list, right? So in no particular order, Sellers, Nussmeier, Manning, Lagway, and I'll throw Mateer.
Yes.
Top 5. Okay. So that's top 5. That's pretty universal. Some people can trade. Some people are really high on Talon Green. 6 through 10. Well, John just mentioned Talon Green's in there.
It's 7. Yeah. 6 will surprise you a little bit, I believe. He's been in the news a lot lately.
Austin Simmons is going to be in there.
He is at 8.
Okay, that's not who you were looking for, but he's got to be in there.
No. He's been in the news a lot lately. Diego Pavia.
Oh, but yeah. I mean, I could stand behind that. I'm okay with Pavia being top 10.
Yeah.
I mean, with what he did last year, I'm okay with. He's never going to play a lick of NFL football. Who cares? He's a good college quarterback. I'm okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a list of teams in front.
He's got Ty Simpson at 9 and Gunnar Stockton at 10.
I mean, those are stabs in the dark, right? We haven't seen a lick of Ty Simpson and Gunnar. We have a very, 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 very small sample size, but okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I probably would put Marcel Reed ahead of both those guys.
I think that's John's point. I think, John, didn't you say you'd have him like 4 or 5 spots higher? That'd be about right then.
Yeah. Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. And then you got Blake Chapin at 11, Jackson Arnold at 12, then Marcel Reed. Then you got Missouri, Tennessee, and Kentucky all after that.
See, if we're just going on the kind of season they're going to have and the kind of numbers they're going to put up, I don't know if anybody's paying attention, but Auburn has 2 elite wide receivers. I mean, really, really good wideouts. You could make the argument they've got the best 1-2 punch at wideout of anybody in the league. So if they block, and according to Cole Kublik, who knows a thing or two about O-line play, he thinks they've got as good an O-line as anybody in the league. And they usually have a pretty good running game. I would say Jackson Arnold, who had none of those things at Oklahoma last year, could actually put up some pretty decent numbers this year and not be finished 12th or whatever it was in that poll.
Might want to win that Baylor game in Waco.
I'm going to tell you what, that's a very losable game.
Yes, it is.
That's a scary game. But kudos to Auburn for scheduling it. I mean, I wish we had more of that.
Yeah. Might want to be careful there. Is this just on the surface, because it is July, guys? Whittle, we'll start with you because you're the guest of honor as always. We can't remember the quote-unquote depth chart of SEC quarterbacks every year for God knows how long. But on the surface here, the depth of that position in this league, how would you describe it based on history, essentially? Like, how deep would you describe it as compared to other years?
Well, that's a great question for Mike and JC. You take that one to the handoff up there at the top of the 12.
Love that answer.
Those two guys are phenomenal at that kind of thing. You know, I'll say a couple of years ago was pretty damn good, and then last year we were thinking, okay, all of these quarterbacks have gone from 2023, I guess, who are going to be the new elite guys in 2024. And then, some guys stepped up. You had your Sellers do so. And Nussmeier did so. So, I think you're a lot more of a known commodity, especially when you bring in some guys like a John Mateer into the mix as well. So, I think this should be a really good year for quarterbacks, and I don't know where it's going to rank. Mike will have a much better perspective in JC certainly than I will, but I like the league because I like Blake Shapen a little bit over there at Mississippi State, and he's down at 11, and I wrote something similar that Mike was talking about Jackson Arnold last week, and said I think he's going to be better. A lot better at Auburn than he was at Oklahoma, and needed a little bit of a change of scenery. And so I think he can be better than 12. I think I'd probably have 14 quarterbacks ranked in the top 10. I'm not sure how I could do it, but the way I feel like that's what I feel like.
You hit on it, John. I mean, the fact that a guy like Marcel Reed is not in the top 10, that says a lot, because I think most years he would be. Again, I can't help but think about this stuff. I realize a lot of people don't care about the NFL, but like right now, Sellers projected first-round pick, Nussmeier projected first-round pick, Manning projected first-round pick, DJ Lagway, when he's eligible a year from now, projected first-round pick. That's pretty strong. Mm-hmm. That's pretty, and that doesn't include that gut in the middle of really good college quarterbacks. I don't know necessarily high projection to the next level, but like really good college quarterback. Like again, a Diego Pavia, doesn't matter. Stetson Bennett was never going to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. Who cares? He won 2 national championships because he was really damn good. Mm-hmm. And
made a bunch of money.
And made a bunch of money. So I think it's a strong top to bottom. Now, of course, we've added. I go back to when this league was 12 teams. Now we're 16. So when you add most recently Texas and Oklahoma, goodness gracious, that's where you start getting, it's maybe as deep as it's ever been. So yeah, it's not only deep, but so many of the most talented guys are returning starters. That's big for me. I never get giddy over a first year starter. I need to see some film on how they do. Not in a 50-point blowout against East Tennessee State, but against SEC competition. Well, we've got plenty of data on so many of these guys already. We know that they've done it and can do it again. And you assume, sometimes this gets you in trouble, you assume all those guys that are returning are only going to be better the following year. Now, you would have assumed that with Carson Beck last year, and he took a major step backwards. He's at Miami now trying to redeem his career in draft stock. But usually guys only get better with a year of experience under their belt.
Good point. We're going to expand on this a little bit more in hour 2. John, before I get you out of here, I do want to you had a chance to along with a lot of the media boys meet up over at Founders Park last week and listen to Coach Maneri talk about the class and the draft picks and all that stuff. Anything of significance that you took away from it?
He sounded pretty bullish on his incoming pitching transfers, which is a good thing for the Gamecocks. They're very excited over there. They've certainly landed a few good pitchers. They've landed some pitchers who are more upside guys, I like to call them, versus finished products. Certainly landed some finished products, but you've got several guys there with 6 ERAs or higher, or haven't pitched very many innings at some spots that are pretty good programs that have left for one reason or another, I guess, looking for greener pastures. But South Carolina also lost some pitchers who are going to some really good schools. I mean, you got 4 guys going to SEC schools. You got one going to an ACC school, one going to a top 20 ERA program from last year, another one going to a top 30 ERA program from last year. So that's 7 really good pitchers that you lost in the portal who are going to really good spots. So, it's going to be very much a new look pitching staff next year, and hopefully it all comes together. But I mean, my main takeaway from that was, you know, how highly Paul spoke of those incoming pitchers. And, you know, one thing that really jumped out to me is I'm trying to think back to last year, and unless Chris Gordon was mentioned in a question, I don't remember Chris Gordon being mentioned at all. And Paul went out of his way a few times to mention how important Chris Gordon was going to be to developing this pitching staff, which I think is a great thing for the Gamecocks. I think he can help tremendously with those guys. I think those guys really respect him a lot. I think they value the kind of insight that he has. And, you know, if he's going to be more involved in the pitching side of things this year, then that right there is tremendous news for South Carolina baseball. So, I mean, that was probably my biggest takeaway in terms of, you know, things that may have changed from last year to this year, even though it wasn't said specifically. And I think that'll help those guys who have upside and not necessarily the most polished guys. I think that's going to help those guys tremendously in trying to achieve their full potential. And if they can do that, then South Carolina is going to be so much more competitive next year.
You like Scobie at short?
He was so good at third base.
I know. Yeah, it's like robbing Peter to pay Paul.
There's nothing that says he won't play third either. For anybody wondering, he's not.
True,
but he is getting the first crack at short. Yes.
Yeah, and I mean, I watched him. I watched him at USA, and the game I was up there. You know, he didn't really. He had one chance and made a nice charge play. You know, I went back and watched a couple of clips here and there, and looked good. I saw the one error he was charged with, and tough luck error if you're scoring it that way. That'd be a hit over at any college park around these parts in the SEC. They're very generous on the offensive side from a hit error standpoint, and that would have certainly been a hit anywhere. But I think it's possible. And you know what? If you get hitters in there, and KJ hits at the level that you think he's going to hit, then I'd be fine with it.
Yeah. He was a high school shortstop. He can play there.
Oh yeah. He can play there a little bit. I mean, and I talked to a few scouts up there about it, and who were watching him over the course of the week, and they said, yeah, you know, he's just got to work on his lateral quickness. And you know,